Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the patch notes for the 2.1 update that's come out today for Total War Warhammer 3, especially affecting Immortal Empires and multiplayer battles. The full patch notes will be linked in the description below and are available at totalwar.com, where you can read them in full, and I shall go over the main changes today and just explain their kind of impact on the game, hopefully of use to some people. Please like and or subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and let's get into the patch notes. So, starting with the changes to Horde factions, Nikai, Vampire Coast and Black Arcs, all of them have had their growth and development points kind of moved around a bit. They've been increased for the costs of Horde development chains, and then it scales down during the later game. So although it will take slightly longer in the early game to build up your Horde buildings, in the later game it should be faster. Horde slots automatically fill, so you no longer have to buy them. This is a really big change for Horde factions, because it means they no longer have to choose to unlock a slot. They automatically unlock. Horde chains, once you build the first building, will now have a development point and a cost respective to the tier of the building whenever you build it, and then upgrades will only cost money, no longer development points. Also a lot easier to increase your chain and get 5 and tier 5 buildings as a main settlement chain much faster. Black Arcs have had a lower development point growth rate, but they get settlement growth, so if they're nearby in a settlement province they'll get the bonuses from the growth of that, making them grow really quickly. Nikai in particular this affects, but also the Vampire Coast ships. They have a higher development point growth rate. As it's their main faction mechanic, Nikai himself is suffering quite a bit, just with still being quite a mediocre faction. This should speed up slightly the way he can increase his Horde buildings, and with his entire faction based around his own Horde tree, this is a very, very good change. Next up, they have changed the spells that are stationary vortexes. These are spells such as Pit of Shades, Infernal Gateway. They have increased the wind-up time for them and lowered the damage of Overcast. In the campaign, it will mean you have to think slightly more when deploying spells on moving units, especially if they're moving in blobs. Once you take this into account, it shouldn't make too much of a difference, but it is important. The Dwarves as a race have been suffering a bit since the launch of Warhammer 3, especially due to their lack of fast, mobile units and decent magic, which is a big thing, obviously, in Immortal Empires. So there have been some pretty significant buffs to the Dwarves to benefit their own current style of gameplay. So firstly, all spell resistance for every single Dwarven unit. Spell resistance from 25% to 35%. This is really quite big because it means the entire army will just be a lot more tanky against magical attacks and against spells, which is what the Dwarves are meant to be tanky against anyway, and it'll make your entire army better at dealing with magic factions, which are quite a common feature in Warhammer 3, including in multiplayer. Hammerers, this unit here that Thorgrim starts with, have received quite a significant buff as well. Their hit points, you can see now, are 10,000. They used to be about 9,200, so they have received a small hit point buff, which will keep them in the fight slightly longer, putting them in line with other tanky Dwarven and other faction units. And they now also, as you can see on their melee attack, they now have magical attacks, which is really nice because the Dwarves struggle a bit with magical damage, so having Hammerers, which are already quite a high damage unit, being able to go in and do magical damage will bypass a lot of the physical resistances that some of the more ethereal units have, etc. Thorgrim himself has had his hit points buffed, and the other major change for Dwarves has been to their runic magic. The runes' effectiveness quite significantly to kind of keep them in line with other factions. Rune of Hearth and Home has increased 5% vigour per second, which is a better effect than the one it had before, and this will build up and get rid of the vigour effects that you might have, especially because you can cast it on a big area and it will give lots of units the chance to recover their vigour. Master Rune of Speed has gone from 30 to 40 seconds, and Rune of Speed has gone from 18 to 30 seconds. These are both big buffs to increase the speed of the Dwarven units, and nearly doubling Rune of Speed's duration is a very good way of doing this. There have been nerfs to Festus the Leech Lord. His healing elixirs now do half of what they used to do, 0.1 HP per second, and Harbinger Pestilence does half the damage it used to do as well, because he was quite overcheap. Ogre Kingdoms have received a small nerf in the form of their Gorger unit. Gorgers, if we go to Ogres, Gorgers, this unit here, have increased a small buff, as you can see there, to their weapon strength, but ordinarily they used to have 50 weapon strength, now they have 70. This would just be nicer because Gorgers, although being a decent unit, do struggle against some of the higher tier monstrous infantry that they should be able to fight. For the Empire, Imperial Authority changes have also been made, with the first destroyed elector count having a less severe Imperial Authority penalty, which is nice, especially if you're playing as one of these two, where Imperial Authority is a very key part of your campaign. You will not get as severe a penalty when the first elector count is destroyed, and if we look at the map, it's likely that a few of them will get destroyed before you're able to protect them. Some of the most significant changes in this update are affecting the vampire counts, with Helman Ghorst down here. He, obviously with his corpse cart that he rides on, was functioning as a mortis engine, but also giving him a lot of hit points, and they have nerfed this very slightly. So he has 1,000 less hit points than he used to have when on his corpse cart. His multiplayer cost has been increased, but he is still very powerful, and the mortis engine effect has not changed. There have been a few other changes to multiplayer costs of vampire units as well, for crypt horrors and necromancers. Looking at the Warriors of Chaos, with the big range of lords they have given them a slight buff to their subjugation mechanic to get vassals. It can now be done on every single human and elf faction. So everything, from Empire factions to Kislev to High Elves to Dark Elves, all of them can be subjugated into being vassalized as an occupied territory, which will make them a lot more fun when expanding down and kind of playing as a subjugation style chaos faction. Although they have still not introduced confederation for these lords, there are a few minor ways of confederating some of them. So Archaon and Be'lakor here both have the opportunity to confederate other Warriors of Chaos factions via settlement occupation by capturing the last available settlement of the other Chaos factions. So this is a nice way of playing as one of these two to get these lords into your army. However, this is not normal confederation. You'll keep the vassals and the legendary lords, but everything else will be gone. Armies, characters, etc. So you will not get the faction, you'll just get the lord, more or less. They have also made a few changes just generally to the campaign, which are quite welcome in this time at Immortal Empires. Regiments of Renown are now available throughout all factions. I know there are a few factions that were struggling to recruit all of them, and this will affect existing saves. So if you have a save and a faction and you were thinking, where's my Regiments of Renown, go back and load it. You should be able to recruit the Regiments of Renown that you weren't able to previously. Legendary Lords, all of them, whether they are melee, ranged, magical, they will all have the Siege Attacker trait. So you can immediately attack walled settlements regardless of siege equipment and monsters in your army. This is excellent because it means that if you start a campaign, you'll immediately be able to take walled settlements without having to build siege equipment, speeding up the campaign a bit, giving it a bit more spice. But siege equipment is still very useful, especially if you're playing as more of a caster lord, because you're not going to be running to the gate with your staff, are you? A few graphical improvements have been made as well, mainly to vegetation and trees. There are also now events in the game informing the players when they completed their campaign victories, which did not exist before, and the campaign victory conditions for long victory have been upgraded for quite a few demon-based lords, and for the champions of chaos for short victories as well. There is now a setting, if we have a look in the settings down here, that will allow this ultimate crisis mode here, which causes every single scenario beneath to begin when the end game triggers, and obviously you pick the time above. And this is quite an interesting one because it means you can have all 5 of these occur at once, which is fairly cool. There have also been some changes to Domination game mode. I don't play PvP very much, and you can read them in the patch notes down below if you're more interested in the changes that have been made to PvP. There are links in the description down below. They have also briefly talked about what's going to come in the next update, some quite exciting stuff. Moving starting positions for Teclis, Scrag, Kairos and Alithanar. Spirit of the Jungle buffs, where AI factions will do a little bit more. Sorely needed. I don't think it will fix Nakai, but it should very much help. Changes to various bugs that still exist. Nakai will now fit in his character screen, which if you've watched my stream you'll see he doesn't normally. And Confederation buffs, which we hope will include ones for every single Chaos faction, so that if you play as one of these you can join the other ones together, because it would be really fun to play all 8 of these in the same campaign. They are also looking at withdrawing a unit from battle having more of an effect, where it can regenerate and be brought back into the battle later, which is a fairly cool idea and something I really hope they implement. Those are all the patch notes for the 9.1 update for Warhammer 3 and Immortal Empires. Hopefully the video was useful to some extent, and have fun in Immortal Empires. Please like and or subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and have a great day, folks.